Did you know that over 57% of people who experience profound personal loss struggle to build meaningful relationships again? For many, the grief becomes a wall, blocking love, joy, and connection. The pain of losing someone we hold dear doesn't just hurt, it consumes, creating a void that seems impossible to fill. If you're here, I imagine you might know that pain, the heavy emptiness, the questions that never seem to have answers. Let me tell you, I know what it feels like. I've been there. This is my story. It began on a cold, gray afternoon. I still remember how the sky hung low, almost as if it felt the weight of what was about to happen. That day, the world I had carefully built came crashing down in an instant. The call came while I was folding laundry, one of those mundane tasks we think will always be there. On the other end of the line, a stranger's voice told me what no heart could ever prepare to hear: the person I loved most in this world was gone. It was sudden. A car accident, they said. Just like that, they were gone. My partner, my best friend, the person who understood the deepest corners of my soul. I couldn't even process it. I dropped the phone and just stared at the walls of my living room, which now seemed to close in on me. The days that followed felt like living in a fog. People told me things like, "Time heals all wounds," or, "They're in a better place now." But none of it landed. None of it could reach me through the heavy cloud of sorrow that clung to me. I could still hear their laugh echoing in my mind. I could feel their absence in every room, every silence. Nighttime was the hardest. I would lie awake in the dark, replaying memories over and over again like a cruel movie I couldn't turn off. I felt like my own heart was betraying me. How could it keep beating when theirs had stopped? Grief is not just pain, it's a thief. It robbed me of joy, of peace, of the ability to see beyond the moment I had lost them. Slowly, it even began to take pieces of me. I pushed away friends and family because I didn't have the energy to explain my pain. They tried to help, but I couldn't hear them. My world was shattered, and I didn't think anyone could put it back together again. I started to fear that I was broken beyond repair. The thought of moving on felt like a betrayal. How could I ever let someone else in when my heart was still holding on to what was no longer there? How could I embrace love again when I was so afraid of losing it all over again? The turning point didn't happen overnight. It started with the smallest moments. I remember standing in my kitchen one day, staring at a mug they had used almost every morning. It hit me, I was stuck, holding on to pain like it was the last connection I had to them. I didn't know how to let go of the grief, and part of me didn't want to. But something deep inside whispered that this couldn't be all there was. I had loved deeply, and even though it hurt beyond words, that love had shaped me. It was worth more than the endless loop of sorrow I found myself trapped in. I didn't know how to move forward, but I knew I had to try. There were moments when I felt like giving up. The first time I laughed again, I hated myself for it. How dare I feel happiness when they weren't here to share it with me? But I realized that love doesn't disappear, it transforms. The love I had for them was still in me, and it could still grow, even if it looked different now. Healing was messy. There were days when I felt okay, and then there were days when I cried until my chest ached. I learned that grief isn't something you get over. It becomes a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you. The fear of loving again was overwhelming. I didn't want to risk the pain of loss again. But I came to understand that love is not just something we give to others, it's something we give to ourselves. I started to believe that I deserved joy, connection, and a future filled with new possibilities. If you're in this place, where the pain feels endless and the idea of love seems out of reach, I want you to know that you're not alone. I know what it's like to feel like you'll never heal. But I also know that it's possible to rebuild your heart, piece by piece. After watching this video, you'll discover how to embrace love again, how to rebuild your life after loss, and how to transform your grief into something that brings light instead of darkness. You'll realize that love isn't gone, it's just waiting for you to take the first step toward it. The journey isn't easy, but it's worth it. I promise you, there is hope on the other side of grief. Keep going. Your heart is stronger than you think. The first time I stepped outside the shadow of my grief, it was a quiet moment. I was sitting by a window, watching the rain trace its patterns down the glass. For the first time in months, I noticed how beautiful it was. The sound, the way the droplets caught the faint light, there was something peaceful about it. And then, out of nowhere, I realized I wasn't just watching the rain. I was feeling it. I was letting the beauty in, even if only for a moment. It startled me, this tiny flicker of life breaking through the gray. But it also terrified me because letting beauty in meant opening a door I had slammed shut the day they were taken from me. I realized that grief had built a fortress around my heart, one that no one could penetrate, not even myself. I had told myself that this fortress was safety, but really, it was isolation. I spent so much time holding on to the past, clutching it so tightly that I was afraid to let go, even for a second. I was scared that moving forward would erase the love I had, as though forgetting the pain would mean forgetting them. But that's not how love works. The truth I came to understand, slowly and painfully, is that love doesn't fade when we grow. It doesn't disappear when we make space for new experiences. Love stretches. It transforms. But before I could embrace that transformation, I had to face the hard truths about myself. I had to admit that I was afraid, not just of loss, but of life itself. I had wrapped myself in the cocoon of my grief because it felt safer to hurt than to risk feeling again. I convinced myself that if I didn't try, I couldn't fail. But deep down, I knew that wasn't living. One evening, I found an old letter tucked away in a box of keepsakes. It was from them, written long before they were gone. In it, they wrote about their hopes for me, the things they loved about who I was. Their words felt like they were reaching out to me across time, reminding me of the person I used to be, the person they believed in. I cried for hours after reading that letter. It was like something broke open inside me, something I had been holding back for too long. I realized that if they could see me now, they wouldn't want me to stay stuck in this place of pain. They wouldn't want me to stop living because they weren't here to live it with me. They would want me to be happy, to find love again, to build something beautiful out of the broken pieces. That's when I knew I had to change. But change isn't a straight line, it's messy and full of setbacks. I wish I could say I woke up the next day with a clear path forward, but that's not how it works. Grief doesn't let go of you easily. There were days I felt like I was moving backward, drowning in the same feelings I thought I'd already overcome. But each time I fell, I got back up, even when it felt impossible. I reminded myself that healing is not about forgetting. It's about carrying the love you've lost with you in a way that strengthens you instead of breaking you. I started to notice the small things again. The warmth of the sun on my skin. The way a familiar song could bring a smile instead of tears. The quiet joy of a friend's laughter. These moments didn't erase the pain, but they added something new to my life, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there was still beauty to be found, even in the wake of loss. The first time I considered opening my heart to love again, I was terrified. My mind filled with doubts. What if I wasn't ready? What if I got hurt again? What if I couldn't let go of the past enough to embrace the future? But then I thought about what it means to truly love. Love is never about guarantees. It's about courage, the courage to show up, to be vulnerable, to risk everything for the chance of connection. I realized that by shutting myself off from love, I wasn't protecting myself, I was depriving myself of the very thing that makes life worth living. I wish I could go back and tell the person I was in those dark days that it's okay to feel broken, but it's also okay to hope. It's okay to dream of a life beyond the pain. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to rush. Just take one step at a time, and trust that even the smallest steps will add up to something beautiful. Looking back, I can see how far I've come. There are still moments when the grief sneaks up on me, but it doesn't control me anymore. It's a part of my story, but it's not the whole story. And if you're reading this, feeling like you'll never heal, I want you to know that you're stronger than you think. You have more love to give, more joy to experience, more life to live. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Keep going. Because on the other side of the pain is something incredible, the realization that love never truly leaves us. It grows, it changes, and it carries us forward into the light, even when we think we'll never see it again. When I decided that I couldn't live in the shadow of my grief anymore, it wasn't some grand, cinematic moment of clarity. It was quieter than that, a slow, tender realization that life still had something to offer me, even if I wasn't sure what it was yet. I knew I couldn't stay trapped in the same cycle of pain forever, but I also didn't know where to start. The first steps felt like learning to walk all over again. One of the first things I did was something that might sound simple, but it was incredibly hard. I admitted I couldn't do it alone. I started by opening up to the people around me, friends, family, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. At first, it felt vulnerable and raw to talk about how much I was struggling, but those conversations turned out to be lifelines. I realized that people wanted to help me, they just didn't know how until I let them in. But talking wasn't enough. I needed something more structured, more focused. I began looking for grief counseling. The process of finding the right therapist wasn't easy, but when I found someone who truly understood what I was going through, it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Therapy taught me how to face my grief head-on, rather than letting it define every part of my existence. My counselor encouraged me to set small, achievable goals, things like going for a walk, journaling about my feelings, or even just getting out of bed on the hard days. Those small steps became the foundation for bigger changes. One of the most transformative things I did was to rediscover the power of gratitude. At first, it felt impossible. How could I feel grateful when my world had been torn apart? But I started small. I wrote down 3 things each day that brought me even the tiniest sense of peace or joy. Sometimes it was the sound of birds outside my window, or the way the sunlight warmed my face. Slowly, I began to notice that these moments added up, filling the empty spaces in my heart little by little. Another critical turning point was learning how to honor the memory of the person I lost without letting it hold me back. I created rituals to keep their spirit alive in my life, lighting a candle on significant days, or writing letters to them when I felt overwhelmed by emotion. These rituals allowed me to maintain my connection to them while also creating space for my own growth. As I worked through my grief, I also began to understand that love wasn't something I needed to fear. The loss had made me feel like opening my heart again would only lead to more pain, but I realized that love isn't limited to one person or one relationship. Love is infinite. It doesn't replace what we've lost, it expands to make room for the new. Rebuilding my confidence in love started with self-love. I had spent so much time blaming myself for things I couldn't control, carrying guilt and regret like heavy stones in my chest. Through therapy and self-reflection, I began to let go of those burdens. I reminded myself that I was deserving of happiness, that I was capable of finding joy even after the deepest sorrow. One of the hardest steps was allowing myself to dream again. For so long, I had felt stuck in a world that revolved around the loss. It felt selfish, almost wrong, to imagine a future that didn't include them. But as I gave myself permission to dream, I discovered that those dreams didn't erase their memory, they honored it. I also sought out community. Losing someone can feel isolating, but I found comfort in connecting with others who had experienced similar pain. Whether it was through support groups, online forums, or simply meeting with a friend who had been through their own loss, those connections reminded me that I wasn't alone. The biggest lesson I learned is that healing isn't linear. There were days when I felt like I had taken 5 steps forward, only to fall back 10 steps. But even on the hardest days, I kept moving. Slowly but surely, the pain softened. It didn't disappear, but it stopped being the center of my world. Over time, I began to explore new opportunities, meet new people, and rediscover parts of myself I thought I had lost forever. The person I became wasn't the same as the person I was before the loss, but that's okay. I learned that it's possible to carry both grief and hope, to honor the past while embracing the future. If you're in the thick of it right now, I want you to know that it's okay to take it one day at a time. Healing isn't about fixing yourself or forgetting what you've lost. It's about learning how to live fully again, even with the pain. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take the first step, no matter how small it feels. For me, that journey wasn't just about the steps I took, it was also about the resources I discovered along the way. One of the most impactful was a book titled Embracing Love After Loss, Rebuilding Your Heart from Grief. This wasn't just any book. It was a lifeline, a guide that gave me the tools and insights I needed to truly transform my life. The book isn't just a collection of generic advice, it's filled with expert knowledge and practical steps that meet you exactly where you are in your grief journey. It helped me navigate the darkest moments, giving me clarity and hope when I thought neither was possible. If you're ready to take that first step toward healing, I can't recommend it enough. You can find a digital copy of Embracing Love After Loss at LibriFFY.com, and the link is in the description. It's a resource that truly changed my life, and I believe it can change yours too. Don't wait. Take that step today, you're worth it. Picking up that book, Embracing Love After Loss, Rebuilding Your Heart from Grief, was one of the most important decisions I made on my healing journey. It didn't just sit on my bedside table as so many self-help books had in the past. I devoured it, page by page, with tears streaming down my face at times, and with moments of hope lighting up the dark corners of my mind. This wasn't a book filled with cliches or empty platitudes, it was like a map, guiding me gently but firmly through the fog of my pain. One of the things that struck me most was how the book spoke directly to my heart. It felt as though it was written for someone who truly understood what it meant to lose, to ache, to question whether love could ever find a way back into a broken heart. It didn't rush me or push unrealistic expectations. Instead, it helped me see that healing was not only possible, it was a process that I could actively engage in, even on my hardest days. Through its pages, I found tools to help me take those first fragile steps toward rebuilding my life. The book offered practical exercises and real-life advice on how to work through grief in a way that felt deeply personal yet universally relatable. For example, one of the early exercises was about creating a memory box, a space where I could honor the life I shared with my loved one without feeling trapped by the past. It was so simple, yet it brought me immense comfort. I filled the box with photos, letters, and mementos, and every time I opened it, it reminded me that love doesn't disappear, it stays with us, just in a different form. Another section of the book talked about the importance of self-compassion. This was something I had struggled with. For months, I blamed myself for things I couldn't change, replaying moments where I thought I could have done something differently. But the book challenged me to let go of that guilt, to forgive myself, and to treat my pain with kindness instead of judgment. It was like being given permission to feel, to grieve, and to grow, all at my own pace. One of the most impactful chapters was about the fear of loving again. The author described this fear as a natural response to loss, but also as a barrier that we have the power to overcome. I realized that my fear wasn't just about losing someone else, it was about losing myself in the process. The book helped me see that opening my heart again wasn't a betrayal of the love I had lost, it was an affirmation of the love I was still capable of giving and receiving. With every page, I felt a little stronger, a little braver. The book didn't promise that the journey would be easy, but it gave me something I desperately needed, hope. It showed me that love isn't something that runs out, it's something that grows, expands, and evolves. Even in the face of loss, love can be the very thing that saves us. One of the most transformative moments came when I reached a chapter about rediscovering joy. For so long, I had associated joy with guilt. How could I laugh, smile, or feel happiness when my loved one wasn't here to share it with me? But the book taught me that joy is not a betrayal, it's a way of honoring the life we still have. It encouraged me to seek out small moments of happiness, whether it was watching the sunrise, listening to music, or simply spending time with people who lifted my spirits. As I applied the principles and practices from the book, I began to notice subtle but profound changes in my life. I started to feel lighter, more present, and more open to the possibilities around me. I even began to explore new hobbies and interests, things I had put on hold during my grief. Slowly but surely, I was rebuilding not just my heart but my entire sense of self. The book also highlighted the importance of community. It encouraged me to seek out others who had experienced loss, to share my story, and to listen to theirs. I joined a support group, and for the first time, I didn't feel so alone. Hearing the stories of others reminded me that grief, while deeply personal, is also a shared human experience. We're all connected by the love we've lost and the hope we're striving to rediscover. Perhaps the most surprising thing I learned from the book was how to see my loss not as the end of my story but as the beginning of a new chapter. It reframed my grief as something that could teach me, shape me, and even inspire me to live more fully. I started to view my life not as something divided into before and after the loss but as a continuous journey where every moment, no matter how painful, had something to offer. Now, as I look back on how far I've come, I can honestly say that I wouldn't be where I am today without the guidance of embracing love after loss. It gave me the tools, the perspective, and the courage to move forward when I thought I couldn't. It's not just a book, it's a lifeline, a trusted companion for anyone who feels lost in the depths of grief. If you're reading this and wondering whether you can ever heal, whether you can ever love again, I want you to know that you can. This book isn't about rushing you through the process or offering easy fixes, it's about meeting you where you are and guiding you, step by step, toward a brighter future. I urge you to get a copy of the book titled, Embracing Love After Loss, Rebuilding Your Heart from Grief, today. You can find a digital version at LibriFFY.com through the link in the description. This isn't just another book, it's a transformative resource that has been a top-tier guide for so many people, including me. It helped me reclaim my life, and I believe it can do the same for you. Don't wait. Take that first step, you deserve it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.
Chasing shadows in the twilight.